Hey, what is going on, guys? It's Ben Brewster with Triathletics, and today I'm going to be breaking down some additional mechanical submissions from you guys. I'm going to drop a link down in the description if you want to submit your mechanics for the potential for me to choose those and break it down in a future video. But I've chosen 4 of you guys today to break down. Just a quick disclaimer, I don't work with any of these athletes, and this is somewhat speculation, out of context. I don't have all these guys' mobility metrics. I have not assessed them. I don't know their strength metrics. So we're going to be doing a certain amount of speculation. That being said, I like to refer to this graphic here from one of my former presentations where really understanding your limiting factor might not be a mechanical factor, or it might be tied into other factors. So while we're going to be addressing the throwing mechanics side of things, it certainly could be a strength and conditioning intervention that is your unlock, is your limiting factor. It could be a nutrition recovery intervention. It could be a data analytics or pitch design or pitchability or psychological or injury type intervention that really is the major unlock holding you back right now. So let's just get that out of the way. We can obsess about mechanics all day, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's always your issue. So hopefully that comes through. There isn't such a thing as perfect pitching mechanics, but we will be applying a framework of our understanding of what the hardest throwers in the world do and the most efficient throwers in the world do, and applying that to these sets of mechanics. So that kind of disclaimer out of the way, let's just dive right in. This is Dominic. Let's just play it through a few times. So you can see off the bat, kind of a stiff mover, not creating a ton of separation. Looks like the hips and shoulders are rotating together, very upright at ball release. Back leg shoots off pretty hard as he rotates, shoots off the rubber. So let's pause this and kind of break it down. He gets a pretty good drift, pretty good first move, right? Back foot's stable here. He's stacked, pretty decent first move. We want to be able to keep that back foot stable, drop into a firm back leg. Whether or not it's in more of an internal rotation hip position, a little more coil, knee in, or more of a vertical shin, knee out, external rotation position, right? That's going to be dependent on the guy and what works best for him. But already kind of know he's a tight mover, probably doesn't have great hip internal. So let's just see what happens. So he drops down, and you can see immediately this knee is just shooting forward, and the foot is just immediately collapsing. So there's no stable back foot anchor that he can actually move forward off of. He immediately comes down out of the drift and is caving into eversion, where that ankle just completely turns over right away. And you can see again what happens at the knee. His back knee hits and just starts caving. So he doesn't have a stable position to actually move forward with his pelvis while holding the pelvis closed and creating any sort of sustained linear move. You can see as he gets into, if you want to call this like kind of a stride drive position, he's caved in on the back leg. He's really got no stability here on the back foot. But look what his lead leg wants to do. His lead leg wants to clear early into early external rotation. Very, very likely that Dominic is a guy with good hip external rotation, or at least average hip external, and probably below average hip internal rotation. He's not able to get IR without kind of caving and letting that back foot pop off. So I would be looking at guys like maybe Carson Fulmer, Justin Verlander, where they're able to not only clear the lead leg early, which he does, but able to hold that back knee back in more of a vertical shin position. Almost think like a sumo deadlift position where the knees are both out. That's a position that the hip ER guys are the most comfortable in, to be able to produce a powerful and stable linear move down the mount. It's about the position of your femurs, the position of your feet and your femurs and your legs that allow the pelvis to be in its most stable position to be able to rotate from. So that position for him is likely going to be more of an external rotation dominant, vertical shin dominant position, where this knee would ideally be able to stay more vertical as he drops into the back leg versus caving in. So that's initially where a lot of the bleed happens. We look at the arm path. Ideally what we want to see is some smoothness, some rhythm, some fluidity to the handbrake, where he captures some amount of rhythm from handbrake, and he's able to create a loop of energy that is able to take him through that flip up some degree of scap retraction, decent amount of layback, not pushing, and then driving downhill through the ball, allowing the arm to spiral out and around and have a nice deceleration arc. So what are we seeing? As soon as he breaks the hands, you instantly see kind of a stabbing action with the throwing arm where he stabs back and the glove arm hikes up. You also don't see any sort of equal and opposite type action where the glove arm isn't really working in the same plane or in conjunction with what the throwing arm is doing. So again, it doesn't have to be perfectly equal and opposite, but if we see a guy where he gets really long in the back with his throwing arm and he's chicken winging it in the front, he's very, very short with the glove arm, usually you're not going to have adequate timing there. Same thing if he had a really long glove arm and then his throwing arm was back here. It's going to be tougher to sync that up. So usually you're going to see guys, their planes are roughly going to match, whether they're short and in more of a horizontal plane, short with a little bit more tilt, long with a little bit more tilt, long and a little bit more horizontal plane. You're going to see some degree of that. If it's way mismatched, like he is right here, that's typically going to lead to some sort of timing issue where this glove arm is ready to go right away, but the throwing arm needs time because he's got a longer arm swing and a little bit longer path behind his body. So if you're going to be longer in the back, try to be a little bit longer with what the glove arm is doing. If you're going to be short with the glove arm, ideally you'd want to be a little bit shorter with the throwing arm as well. Think like Joe Kelly as a great example of someone who gets here and he's still able to make those match and get in plane, and the glove arm is able to screw him down into the same plane as what his throwing arm ultimately gets into. It's not short in the front, super long in the back, and then mismatched planes. So as soon as he progresses into landing, you can see his arm really struggles. And this isn't actually the same exact throw. These are two different throws that I just synced up, but you can see his arm really struggles to get into this flip up position. So it looks like he runs into kind of a block in flip up where he gets here, and what you'd want to see is it continues into scap retraction and he's able to flip it up into external rotation at landing. He's able to get retraction, get into that position with the shoulders still closed, and now he can get a big stretch through his chest, arm on time, and an arm in a good position to actually accept that layback as he rotates. What happens though is he really wants to get the arm up, and it never gets up. He never is able to actually get the flip up. And so what happens is it's likely a mobility issue for him, is that very top corner, I'm calling it a corner, as your arm goes into flip up, it's that position right here, that top corner, that is it's really the toughest to get if you really bound up through the pec minor, really bound up through the subscap, really bound up through the anterior shoulder, really bound up through the lat. It's that top corner, everything's dragging you down anteriorly to be able to get all the way up and back and into full scap retraction. That's what he's not seeing. And so when guys are really limited in the flip up portion, instantly I'm looking at, hey, what's going on from a mobility standpoint. And so looking at his mobility screen would really give us a lot of clues as to which specific tissues are getting under max tension too early and preventing his arm from actually moving like an arm into this smooth, nice retracted position. So boom, doesn't get the arm up. And let's see what happens as far as the segmentation between his hips and his shoulders. Because if your arm's not going to get up and you're a little bit stabby and tense through there, right? Nathan Eovaldi is kind of an example of that. His arm doesn't move as well as maybe like a Jacob deGrom, but he still segments the hips and the shoulders really well, has an elite lead leg block, produces a ton of power off a stable back leg. There's still a lot of other things you can do, right, to overcome a little bit of a kind of choppy, stabby arm path. But let's look at what happens into landing. So right here, trunk is closed. Hips look like they're starting to open up, but can he hold the shoulders closed until landing? Nope, shoulders start to open up. His front foot still isn't down. Shoulders start to open up a little more. Front foot still isn't down. And front foot lands. So now lead leg is down, but look where his torso is. This is classic, pretty extreme early torso rotation. So from this position, how long of an arc can you apply, force to the ball? Well, you're going to be able to apply force to the ball from about, here to there. So if you already land fully open, you're going to apply force to the ball from here to there. That's it. Whereas you look at like Ben Joyce, he's applying force to the ball. His foot's down. and he's back here applying force to the ball from here all the way to out there. So it's a total biomechanical disadvantage to land completely open like this, but it's not like he's trying to land open. What is typically happening, and you see the hips and the shoulders rotating, he's rotating as one kind of block. It's a blocked rotation versus the hips going and then the spine flowing through and creating that whip-like, tornado-like mechanism. This is not a whip, this is just one kind of rigid board all rotating as one unit. So again, we go back to mobility. What's going on with the hips? How's his hip rotation? How is his spinal segmentation? T-spine rotation, T-spine extension, all the tissue work, all the tissue quality and tissue tone through his all the muscles attached on the scapula. What does that all look like? Because if I don't understand that, then I don't understand, I can't fully understand why his body's moving this way on the mound. So this is likely not a scenario where you can just cue like a certain drill or two and suddenly get perfect hip-shoulder separation and perfect layback. This is a scenario where there's some mobility limitations going on. If we take it further, you can see obviously really upright trunk position, not able to get full extension, trunk extension out front. Elbow obviously shoots in front of the face. He's getting a little bit pushy there as well due to how late he creates that layback. And so again, he's lost before he's even begun the throw because of this right here. He's already kind of lost the throw. This is just not a stable position to be able to move forward linearly off of, to be able to rotate the hips, to be able to create that segmentation. So again, if we're gonna go a grade, just because that's kind of I'm doing the format here, he's got a lot of room to improve. So if we put D, I think he's got a ton of potential left. So if he's already touching 84, I put predicted velo probably 82 to 85, touching 87, maybe 88 once a lot of these issues are fixed. As I would consider this a classic ultra stiff mover example. We look at what's going on in this back foot. There's likely limited mobility through this rear ankle. We look at what's going on in this back hip and groin. Likely a ton of issues through the adductor and just limits in hip abduction, abduction. And then again, I would expect to see pec minor, lat, subscap, issues through that scapula, through that shoulder. Hip internal rotation is likely an issue. There might be a genetic component there, that probably is, but that doesn't mean it can't be something that can be improved to some extent. Would like to see more of a vertical shin position, or at least try that. And I imagine that will help clear a little bit more of a stable back foot position. Again, a tissue evaluation and a mobility screen would confirm a lot of this. It's not something that can just be patterned out of when there's a really strong mobility limitation. Again, we go back to that pie chart. If that's the issue, if it's more of a prehab and correctives issue, then until we address that piece of the pie, the mechanics are just not going to slot into place. So these really do go hand in hand. Addressing the prehab and the correctives and the mobility side will allow you to effortlessly get into better positions in your actual mechanics. And again, he looks strong. I'm sure his strength is pretty good. Those types of things to be evaluated as well. I'm sure that's decent if he's touching 84 with these patterns. So again, I said within 3 to 6 months of regular tissue work, opening up the hips, fixing the caving back leg, and if he's able to flow better through that arm spiral, kind of match up what the glove arm is doing with the throwing arm, I don't see a reason that he couldn't be plus 3 to 4 miles an hour from where he is here, kind of in the short term. Long term, again, the extent to which he's able to open up his mobility is going to be the limiting factor. Some of these guys genetically are just such stiff movers that 95 miles an hour is kind of far off. And then some of them, it really is, they open up that tissue and they start moving like a different person, and they can really have a lot of potential left. So it does depend a little bit on a guy's kind of genetic structure as well, in terms of how tolerant they are to some of this mobility interventions. As far as some drills to try, one thing that could be helpful is for holding that vertical shin is I call it a walkout rocker, but Here would be an example of it. So basically a rocker drill, but you can walk your way down the mound while holding tension, holding a vertical angle on the back shin. So play that again. This didn't show the start of it. Basically, he started set, preset a little bit of hinge and tension in the back hip, and then walked his way down until he got into that starting position. And then he was trying to feel like he was holding onto the back leg throughout that entire throw. So it's a rocker throw with a leg lift, just starting with feeling a little bit of that preset vertical shin position, and then trying to hold that right there, trying to hold the knee back as he moved forward. And again, that's not something that I would prescribe for everybody. Like myself, I would not do this drill, but for your hips and how they work, and once a guy is, once you see that a vertical shin position might be helpful for him, this can be a way to reinforce that as far as some drill work. Again, just another angle of, this is a figure 8 rocker throw, so another way to kind of blend that position, kind of walking his way out, trying to hold that angle, and then adding in a little bit of a loose fluid figure 8 arm spiral to that, which again, that would be something that would kind of come into play for you as well. Once the mobility side of the equation was addressed, your arm's not going to necessarily be able to move as freely and fluidly as this and be able to flip up as deep as that until you open up everything on the front side of your shoulder to be able to get into some of these deeper positions on the back end as far as scap retraction. Player comp, I put Roy Oswalt. You could say Carson Fulmer might be a good example. Another, I think he's like 5'10", 200 or so. So another guy to look at. But again, both of those guys, you'll see quick tempos, you'll see stable back foot, you'll see being able to segment the hips ahead of the shoulders, landing closed, arm exhibiting full lay back, not pushing any of those other issues. So a lot of potential here. I think it's exciting with how much room there definitely is to continue improving. So that's Dominic. Next one is Daniel. We got 3 more guys to work through here. Daniel is 6'3", 202, 91, 95. So pretty good. Let's play it through a few times. 23 to 2600 RPM fastball. So instantly I'm thinking he probably has some cut on the fastball. When you see a 2600 RPM spin rate on the fastball, 99 out of 100 times, like that's not necessarily all going towards vertical break, right? If he was getting perfect spin efficiency at 2600 RPM, like he might have a 22-inch vertical break, 21-inch, something like that. But more than likely, he's probably getting a little bit of cut on the fastball. So instantly, that's what I'm thinking there. Just before I even look at his mechanics, let's playing it through it a few times. Just at a glance, you can see moves pretty well. You can see it's a little bit of an abbreviated arm path, a little bit not stabby, but there's a little bit of a hitch there where he gets the arm up, there's a lag, and then he accelerates it. So he's likely bleeding a little bit of energy there as far as not capturing that momentum through his arm spiral and being able to redirect it into one seamless loop. He kind of gets up, pauses, and then starts from scratch again. So you have to then overcome that inertia, and you really bled out a lot of the potential elastic, energy potential there. If you were to go do a vertical jump, would you, bend down, drop down and spring up quickly, or would you drop down and pause for a half second and then jump up? Right, you're not going to jump up as high if you pause, because you've just lost out on some of that potential elastic energy and the stretch shortening cycle in those tissues. So let's slow it down. I'm kind of rambling. Does he have much of a drift? Not really. So his first move is to kind of just stay on a balance point over the rubber and just drop into his back leg. So he kind of just stays in place and just drops down. He doesn't get much of a forward move. So that is something for Daniel, for you, that would be helpful, is probably looking to figure out how to get a 2, 3, 4-inch drift. And I would say something like walking wind up, which we'll talk about that in a second, but a walking wind up, something where we get your momentum going forward, even just a little bit, is going to help create a better, more lateral vector of force and an application of force through the back leg into the rubber to actually propel you down the mound. So drift isn't great. Let's look at the linear move. So a pretty good sit into the back leg, holding a good stable backside, holding the pelvis closed, staying relatively stacked through the upper half. As we actually get into landing, you can see a little bit extended through this back leg, not bad, but as you begin to rotate, you can see that back foot kicks in pretty hard. So this is a sign that the segmentation between the hips and the shoulders isn't necessarily as ideal as we would like, or you'd see this back foot kind of stay back here. You'd see the hips pop through a little bit more. Right now, as they rotate, the shoulders come with, and that's where you get this kind of back knee drive, which shoots forward off the rubber. So that's a sign that segmentation isn't occurring as well as we would ideally like, and rotation isn't occurring as well as we would ideally like. If we look at scap retraction, this position right here, again, this is a decent position, but we would like to see, that arm up a little bit deeper scap retraction. I think the main thing here is actually a timing issue, which I touched on, where the arm gets up. It looks like you have the potential to have some decent retraction there, but because you get it up too early, it kind of just sits there, lags, and then by the time you actually get to landing, you're not in the same position that you could be in. So I would say, as far as figuring out a way to fix that arm getting up so early, giving it a little bit more time to kind of spiral up into place, as opposed to getting it up and then your lower half still has to take some time to land, and by then the arm has already come forward a little bit. So that hitch and lag in the arm path is, I would say, probably the most major mechanical limiting factor right now for you. So having a continuous fluid handbrake would probably be the most helpful thing. So because the arm gets up too early at landing, it's not in full retraction, it's a little bit forward. Because it's a little bit forward at landing, now as you begin to rotate, you can see there's a little bit of a push right here from the side. Again, these are not the same throw, obviously, so I can't tell from the side in this clip if you're pushing as bad, but right here there's a little bit of a push. And again, you can see with where you're hitting that layback, it's a little bit in front of the ear. Right, it's not the worst push ever. A really bad push starts to happen, layback starts to happen way out in front of the nose. Your elbow would be out here at this point, really leading in front of the shoulders. So it's not terrible, which is why you're still throwing low to mid 90s. You're obviously a good athlete, obviously strong, obviously explosive. But again, getting a little bit of a push there just because of where you're at landing here, as opposed to having proper timing and getting that scap into a little bit more retraction. The elbow would be back here at this point, and you'd be getting much more of a pull through your chest to actually accelerate your arm and pull into release instead of getting a little bit more of a tricep driven push. So that's, again, purely a timing issue with the arm getting up too early. So overall grade mechanically, I would say B-, C+, which is pretty cool when you're touching 95 with like B- mechanics, because that tells me there's a lot of room for improvement from that standpoint. So I put predicted velo 95, 97 in game. If you can get a slight drift, fluid handbrake, eliminate that lag, hitting your layback, about 90 degrees of elbow flexion, you're a little far inside 90. Not terrible though, I don't think that's a huge issue. But hitting that layback a little bit further back, which should take care of itself with the arm timing, I don't see why you couldn't be 95, 97 in games, or at least sitting towards the very top end of your current velocity range. So again, that's pretty exciting. I wouldn't put it past, there's an outside chance you could be a triple digits guy with just how, clearly very good athlete, and just seeing these types of numbers, you might have some cut to it as well. So if you're like a 16 vert, 0 horizontal, metric guy, you're already cutting the ball, then, you could be a 93, 96 guy right now if you just eliminated the cut, and then you fix some of these mechanical issues. Now you have a plus 2, +3 on top of that. So I don't have all the context. I would assume your strength is really good. I would assume your explosiveness is top, 90th percentile. I would assume that your mobility is pretty decent through your hips, but could be a little bit better, and could be a little bit better through your T-spine as well. And again, could be some other mobility issues here as well that we're not factoring in. Neck, ankle, potentially some scapular stuff, and those are all probably more minor things to clean up. So we need to see a full movement screen to really identify that, but there's an outside chance that triple digits is possible. And so I want to see, give you an example of what that might look like. And anytime I can use Nolan Ryan as a comp, I think it's pretty cool. But you kind of see this from a front angle. I don't know if he was, a guy that you ever modeled your mechanics after, but I really see this with the leg lift. But again, what's the main difference? The main difference is he doesn't have this huge back knee kind of caving into release, and he's got a continuous arm spiral, right? A little bit shorter arm path, so that's okay. But he's creating one smooth continuous arm spiral into ball release. It's not up, pause, hitch, and then accelerate. So he's capturing that full loop of energy. He's capturing the stretch shortening cycle, and that is the triple digit version of you. I don't know that he was necessarily a more explosive athlete. It wasn't taller than you, right? It wasn't carrying more muscle mass than you, right? He was moving more dynamically and athletically and explosively than you are right now, and syncing it up better. So hopefully that's motivating for you. You get your mechanics to an A, you address some of these things, and that's going to be pretty electric. As far as some things to try, I'm going to pause this because it just keeps on playing. Walking windups, but specifically walking windups where you go hands over the head, so that you can start to feel that one continuous flow from hands over the head through your arm spiral, right? Just starting here, a lot of guys, or even starting wherever you start, a little bit lower. A lot of guys, when they start there, it makes them a little bit robotic, a little bit choppy. And so even if you don't go hands over the head in the game and you throw out of the stretch in the game, mixing in some walking windups with the hands over the head, or just throwing out of the windup with the hands over the head, is going to help you start to feel that connected loop of energy and help you flow through these positions. This is something that Mitch Keller did a lot of this past off season, when he obviously gained a few miles an hour. It was up to 100.9, I believe, indoors, and he's been up to 100 a few times in this season in games. He had gotten a little bit choppy, a little bit off time with his arm path over the past several years, and it was simply a matter of giving him these types of things. Figure eight drills, hands over the head. Let me pull up that other figure eight drill right here. So figure eight drills to feel that fluid connected arm spiral, feel capturing the pendulum, capturing it deep, and seamlessly redirecting it back downhill. That's going to make a huge difference for you. There could be some mobility limitations here, but it looks to primarily be a patterning issue with the arm spiral. I would also recommend busting out the 7-ounce hard baseball in catch play. It's going to help you feel a little bit of that deeper connected flip up, deeper retraction. Again, just the first 10-20 throws in catch play, low to moderate efforts, and then once you've kind of felt that, it's going to give you more awareness of where your arm is in space. It's going to exaggerate this hitch, this lag in your arm path, and when you get it right, it's going to feel that much better when you're using a 7-ounce. Once you can feel that position, drop the 7-ounce, pick up the 5-ounce ball, and continue the rest of your catch play. But I really like the slight overweight balls in catch play to help guys that need to feel a little bit better timing and a little bit, more of that deep scap retraction when that front foot gets down. So I would try those things. Pretty cool base to build on with where your mechanics are at, and reach out if you have any further questions for us. Next we have Noah. Let's pull him up. All right, so this is Noah. Play it through a few times for you guys. So Sidewinder. I know that a lot of guys are curious, kind of my take on submarine sidearm guys. If the same mechanical principles apply, the answer is that they do. But long story short, there aren't as many hard throwing, low slot guys because again, you are working against gravity. You're working from slightly less biomechanically efficient positions, and you're again leveraging deception to be effective versus leveraging pure biomechanical efficiency to throw as hard as possible. So that's okay, and we need to understand it in context, but recognizing that if you can have a combination of still good velocity or moderate to good velocity from that angle, now you become really a dual threat pitcher, and it's not just like a one-trick pony who can come in soft tossing, be deceptive, but really stand out potentially at the next level. So all I know about him, he's 6 foot, 165, 81 to 84 miles an hour. which, you know, for that size, that's a good velocity from his arm slide. Right, that's pretty respectable. That's like Division I velocity. I don't know what level he plays at, but it's pretty good from that slot. Off the bat, you know, you can tell he's undersized. Tell that Noah needs to gain some weight, put on some strength. His mobility is actually pretty decent as far as some of the positions he's getting into. You can tell his arm works well. His arm's getting up and back. But again, 6 foot 165. You know, probably needs to get to 185 pounds, maybe 190 pounds at a minimum, while doing that relatively responsibly, probably taking a full year or so to put that weight on without gaining any excess fat and without losing any mobility. So doing it the right way is going to be important versus just putting on 30 pounds for the sake of putting on 30 pounds in 4 months. Let's walk through it. So he still has a good drift, right? He gets moving forward. He's got a little bit more of that upright torso posture initially. Some low slot guys will kind of preset a little bit hunched over, but he stays upright to start. And as he transitions into the hinge, what do we want to see? We want to see him hit a pretty stable back foot position, see that knee stabilize, and see some sort of kind of stack to the torso. And he does that pretty well. So with lower slot guys that can still throw hard, you see a big, you see what typically more of like a linear separation component where they get a ton of being able to hold the head back, hold the upper half back, even as the hips continue to move forward down the mound. So let's pull up his comp here, or who I like to use as a comp for submarine or sidearm guys, because he's a mid-90s thrower who's also from this slot. So we go to that same position, right? A little bit of a drift. And look at the position right there. Look at the difference. If I can minimize that. Look at the difference in position right here between these two. Right, so significantly more what I would consider linear separation or linear dissociation. He's able to let the hips go way down the mound while holding the head way back, and he's able to create such a delayed rotation from the hips and create such torque from that standpoint, because he's not able to use, he's not able to get downhill as well and use gravity to his advantage and use leverage to his advantage. So he's using range of motion to his advantage, and he's trying to create as much torque as possible by delaying hip rotation and by getting as extended as possible without losing this back foot. So you look at Sandlin's back foot, stable, 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 stable. He's still in the backside, still in the backside, still in the backside. Now it starts to turn over, and it just snaps through at the last second and delivers his arm. Let me play that a few times through. And then let me show actually I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so that's one of the first things we see. He doesn't hold the hinge as long as you would like to see. If his goal were to throw, let's say, 88, 90 miles an hour from this slot, I would like to see him holding this position. How long can you stay in the backside? How long can you hold the head back as you move forward? Right, that's what I would like to see. That's going to take pretty incredible hip mobility to be able to do that. And again, you see these hard throwing submarine guys, sidearm guys at the next level, are typically like the 6'4" guys who are long and loose and have great mobility to be able to get in some of these positions to overcome the leverage and biomechanical disadvantage from throwing there. So staying in the hinge longer would be probably the biggest thing from a mechanical standpoint. If we look at the actual arm action, right, I want to see rhythm, I want to see capturing that pendulum, I want to see no lags or hitches. And we largely do see that. So he captures that arm spiral pretty well. Right, where is that arm at landing? He's flipped up deep. He's right around 90 degrees of elbow flexion as he actually begins to accelerate, maybe a little bit outside 90, but that's okay. In my opinion, he gets to 90 as he begins accelerating. But here's something that's a little bit concerning. One is the back knee shoots pretty hard off the rubber, so he could be segmenting the hips from the shoulders a little bit better. Again, we see that knee shoot way off, and where's the foot at ball release? It's, you know, 1.5 feet off the ground. But we also see that elbow significantly low at ball release. So let's go to Nick Sandlin, kind of a typical pitch from him. Play this through one time.
Yeah, these guys don't even have to swing.
So holding the backside, pops it through ahead of the torso. Now the torso comes through, arm spirals out and around. And look how the arm is roughly in plane with the shoulders. For Noah, his shoulders are level and his elbow is way down here. So you'd like to see the arm roughly in plane. I'd like to see the elbow up a couple inches versus really working up through the baseball and that elbow being below the line of the shoulders. If we can get him up here, at least in line with the shoulders, now he's going to be actually be able to transfer more of that trunk rotation and get that out and around into the ball. So that's the first thing. Definitely needs to get bigger, definitely needs to get stronger while maintaining mobility. Something interesting to note with submarine guys, right? There's my theory with this, because I've been a low slot guy before. I mean, I am a low slot guy, but I have been this low before, right? I have been an 85, 87 guy who was roughly there with my arm slot. And I've also been, 98 from here or from right here. So there's a pretty big difference, what I found, between allowing my trunk angle, my contralateral tilt to be below horizontal and getting it just up to horizontal or a little bit above. There's a huge difference from my experience with the amount of velocity that you're able to generate. So it can sometimes make sense to play that game of inches where, hey, I know I'm gonna add 3 inches, 4 inches to my release height, but I might be able to add 5 miles an hour to my velocity by playing that game. So finding where exactly on that curve you can generate the most ball movement and the most deception as it relates to the velocity, and those are gonna be somewhat inversely correlated. But you might find, like, you might be an 85, 87 guy from here and an 81, 84 guy from here. And that's probably a no-brainer as far as where you're going to be most effective. Still having a different look from the bullpen, but also having the ability to throw with a little bit more elite velocity and create better outcomes from that standpoint. So I'd like to see that elbow get up, either the trunk angle staying the same and the elbow getting up, or if you're going to be down here, I'd like to see the trunk match it, like getting the elbow and the trunk to match. So you can see with the Nick Sandlin example, where did we go with that? The Nick Sandlin example, trunk is right about horizontal, maybe a little bit below horizontal, but he's able to match that as far as where the elbow actually gets to. He has a little bit of elbow flexion, which is why it looks like this, but shoulders through the elbow, he's right there in a straight line in plane, and again has a little bit of elbow flexion as well. So I talked about how that game of inches can be really relevant for submarine sidearm guys. Sandlin is primarily 2 to 3, 92, 93 when he's a little bit lower release height, especially on the sinker. So that would be this pitch.
Yeah,
But I looked at some of his jumping ahead. Here we go. I looked at some of his fastest pitches on the year. This is a 95.5. He has a couple 96s. His release height on those is about 4.9, so like 4 foot 10 inches, somewhere around there. And he's around 4 foot 6, 4 foot 7 on kind of his typical fastball release height. So he's actually a few inches higher as far as his release height on his fastest pitches. So take a look at this one. This is the second fastest pitch of the year.
1-2 to Celestino. 2-2.
So we take him to, boom, take him to release, and you can tell he's not down here anymore. He's got the shoulder angle to right about parallel. And again, there's an inflection point there when you just get to parallel. There's a ton of pitchers now that have thrown upper 90s from here. There's a ton of Max Scherzers, Luis Castillos from here. There's very few upper 90s guys from here. So there's something from biomechanical efficiency standpoint that changes, and that can be an important inflection point to at least consider, if you would be as effective from this slot. Sandlin, he seems to, kind of be comfortable a little below sidearm, but, have the ability to add a couple ticks when he wants and, come a couple inches higher slot with the four seam when he wants a little bit more carry on that pitch. So just worth pointing out. I think for you being able to stay back in the backside, one drill that could be helpful is the step back drill to really feel that weight shift and be able to feel you stick the backside and keep the head back as your hips go way forward. I think with all of this being said, even if you just gain the weight and stay back a little bit better and improve the mobility in your backside a little bit more, you could be an 84, 87 mile an hour guy touching 88 plus, especially if we factor in maybe 1 to 3 inches of getting that elbow up and playing a little bit better. So hopefully that was helpful, not just for Noah, but for any kind of lower slot guys watching here. Again, I think Nick Sandlin's an awesome example of how it is still possible to, generate elite velocities from a little bit of a lower arm slot. And the last one for today is Hurston. I know I had him popping up here a second ago. All right, let's play this through a couple times. So what do we know about him? Well, all I know is he's 6'2", 207 pounds, and he's been up to 98 miles an hour. He's averaging about 18 inches of vertical break on his fastball, and he's got a negative 5.5 vertical approach angle. Vertical approach angle is out of context like this actually doesn't mean all that much because it's so dependent on where you actually locate your pitches in the zone, right? If you throw everything up in the zone, even if you're a super high slot pitcher, tall pitcher, you're still gonna have a pretty high vertical approach angle compared to like a sidearm guy who throws everything down in the zone. So location matters a lot when it comes to VAA. Pitch type matters. So VAA does matter, but totally out of context. This doesn't tell me nearly as much as just looking at, kind of your release height and your slot and the type of carry you're able to create. So really good carry, really good velocity, college pitcher, good body, good build, looks strong. I immediately think of Jack Leiter when I see these mechanics, and I'm sure that was, somewhere in his, I'm sure he's watched Jack Leiter a ton. But immediately see that the stuff definitely looks comparable. I don't know what his off speed looks like, but the fastball is definitely comparable with those types of metrics. Jack Leiter had a little bit of a higher vertical approach angle and had a little bit of a lower slot. Just at a glance, I don't know your exact release height, but this is definitely a higher slot than Jack Leiter. So that was one thing that made his fastball particularly sneaky, is that he was releasing it from this type of slot right here and still creating around 20 inches of average carry, which is just a really sneaky combo. From this type of slot, you'd like to see 20 inches of vertical break pretty regularly, which I'm sure you do. I'm sure that's not an abnormal number, but again, from a higher slot, if you can get that efficiency up, 99% efficiency, 100% efficiency, that ball is going to carry a little bit better even. And again, you are a guy where I'd recommend chasing carry. Long toss, pull downs on a line, really trying to get it downhill and get out front. When you get down on your pull downs to 60 feet, 65 feet, that's where you're going to really feel the backspin and get that last little bit of extension and be able to train, that 18 inches to turn into 19, 20, 21 inches, even 22 inches of vertical. Why do so many catchers have really ridiculous vertical break numbers when they hop on the mound? It's because all they do is all day throw head high seeds on a line, and they're training that backspin, and they're training, the throws that run or sink. They're training and being selected to not do that, to be able to keep those throws on a line, head high carry. So just one thing, just first tip off the bat is make sure I would recommend building in long toss and pull downs in some capacity if you aren't already, which you probably are. As we go through these patterns, very, very clean, just watching them through at a glance. I see the tempo, it's a quick tempo, great up tempo, great rhythm. The drift is good as well. You get some forward momentum, but you're still holding the back leg. So you're getting forward a couple inches, but you fully have the back leg here. You don't lose the back leg at all. You drop into a really stable backside, kind of a little more vertical shin than Jack Leiter actually. He's a little bit more of an internal rotation guy. But you drop into a pretty deep but stable, powerful hinge on the backside. You've still allowed yourself to sit and ride the slope. You ride it forward, rotate, pelvis pops through at the very last second. You clear the hips while keeping the shoulders back, the arms up on time, eyes are on the target, front foot's down, blocks in both planes, so you can see the knees not caving out towards first base or towards the catcher once you stick the landing. Arm is spiraling out and around, you're hitting your layback back behind the ear, you're getting full layback, you're releasing way out in front of the front foot, good extension, front leg blocks, back leg doesn't shoot forward, back knee doesn't shoot inwards, finishing with intensity, finishing aggressively. Again, rotating through release. The only thing I would say might be an issue, which I don't really think it's an issue because it's hard to see from the angle, but it's possible that your elbow is climbing a little bit. So if we look at the actual trunk angle, you'd like to see the arm at ball release in line with the trunk and not up here, not climbing up a little bit, or even as you rotate, the elbow not climbing up a little bit above the line of the shoulders. It looks like you might be a hair. And so again, if you were starting to have any sort of like shoulder impingement type issues, that might be a conversation to have with your coach as far as, hey, like, can we still be effective from, you know, this slot right here and still create backspin and carry, you know, without necessarily taking the shoulder out of plane. The other option is if you're going to create a higher arm slot like that, you know, just making sure to be as clean as possible through your T-spine extension, through your hips, to be able to allow yourself to clear the way for that. James Karinchak is a good example. We work with him, and he's a super high arm slot guy, but you know, you need to be able to keep everything clean. It's actually it's a lot easier to clear the way for a low 3/4 or a 3/4 arm slot than it is to actually be a true high 3/4 or overhand guy, because to get there cleanly and not just cheat it, you need to have such good hip mobility and such good thoracic mobility to be able to get there in a way that doesn't bang up your shoulder. So keep that clean. I would say overall grade for this delivery is an A. I mean, this is a efficient delivery. This is a big league delivery. Mechanics are not always a limiting factor, which I talked about before. And I think at this point, your mechanics are in that 95th percentile, 99th percentile efficiency. You're throwing super hard. I don't think that searching for mechanical adjustments at this point is the wisest thing, because there's a lot more opportunity to screw up your timing, screw up where you're at right now if you obsess about it too much. I'm not saying you are, but again, this is a clean delivery. You're having success. I would not mess with it too much from where you are here. I would just, again, try to be as smooth, explosive as possible. Reinforce this. Just continue to stay on the mound, be comfortable, you know, and look to, again, where else on this pie chart can you be squeezing out performance, right? Where can we go from here? Is it getting 5% more powerful? Is it working through some mobility issues? Is it, you know, maybe you've had a banged up shoulder and some prehab correctives? Is it figuring out, you know, a fourth pitch? Is it figuring out the consistency of your second pitch, your third pitch? Again, there's a lot of things that go into this that we would be looking at in a full movement screen, a full assessment, to figure out, hey, what is the actual best use of our time? Maybe it's something as simple as with Kyle Wright in season last year. It's like, hey, your best pitch is your curveball and you're barely throwing it. All right, it wasn't anything ridiculously complicated. And that was the entire difference maker for him, is being able to assess the entire picture and say, where can we intervene here to make that fine-tuned adjustment? Because you're in such a good spot mechanically right now that I don't think that's where you should be focusing a lot of your time. As far as your arsenal, high vertical break, so I would really be looking to pair a hard breaking ball, something with depth off of this. So hard curve ball over 82 to 84 miles an hour. If you can get it up into that low to mid 80s range, that's going to play the best at the next level. If you can get a gyro slider in that 87, 88 mile an hour range with where you're at right now, even up to 89, 90, something with, again, depth that can create that vertical separation off the high carry fastball. That's going to be pretty electric too. You might already do this. I'm just not familiar with your arsenal. You know, again, I mentioned this in the last mechanical analysis, but Once your mechanics are in a really good spot, it doesn't mean that you can't still work on smoothness and efficiency. You know, I use the DeGrom example. You know, how did he go from sitting 97 to sitting 99 to sitting 100? He just worked on keeping his patterns, but being as smooth and efficient and throwing hard, easy. And you know, how smooth can I be in these patterns on a daily basis? And so that's why a lot of pitchers will, you know, start the year at a certain velo, and by the end of the season, they're 2 or 3 miles an hour harder. Like nothing fundamentally or consciously changed a lot of the time. They just get really comfortable on the mound, really comfortable in their patterns, really comfortable flowing through these exact same positions with a little bit better rhythm, a little bit better tempo, and a little bit better sequencing, to where on video it might not look any different to myself or to you, but internally you can just feel like that one really synced up. You know, it's not every 10th throw that I can hit 98. Now it's, you know, every throw I can hit 97, 98, and my best ones are now 99. Right, that's the type of feel that you're going to be going after, versus making any sort of kind of gross timing or mechanical changes at this point. So there is a time to stop tinkering with mechanics, and I think you're there, which is pretty cool to see. Yeah, I think I covered everything there. You know, maybe there's some room to continue improving from a strength side, mobility side, etc. But again, you're pretty filled out. You look pretty athletic, pretty lean. Like this is, you know, good looking delivery. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. I mean, reach out and we can definitely, you know, give you some better direction and guidance as far as where to go from here. You know, but I don't think mechanics are the answer for you at this point. So went through, yeah, so Hurston was the last guy. That's it, guys. That's all I got. Again, send your videos down below in response to that Twitter thread if you would like me to consider breaking those down in a future video. Again, we do offer a full mechanical analysis service as well. So again, I'm giving you guys the 5-10 minute version for select guys just for your educational purposes. But if you want a full breakdown of your mechanics, you can click the link in the description. We have a whole 55-point checklist that we go through. We'll get on a call with you, break it down step by step, answer all your questions. And then if any of you guys are interested in kind of the next step in your training, your career, obviously email us, contact@triathletics.com, and we can kind of explain how that whole process would work, and get on a call with you guys as well. So that's all I got. Let me know what you'd like to see as far as future video topics in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks again.